Aloha, welcome to the Debrief from Hawaii News Now, where we break down the biggest issues facing the islands. I'm your host, Emily Cristobal, and in today's episode, we are discussing the topic of homelessness in Hawaii. According to data collected last year, nearly 6,000 people experienced homelessness in the islands, with the vast majority of those being residents, and 1 in 4 being Native Hawaiians. To discuss this issue and what is being done to help those in need, we are joined by State Senator Joy San Buenaventura and State Representative John Mizuno. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So, Representative Mizuno, I wanted to start on Oahu. You represent the Kalihi area. Can you talk about some of the issues of homelessness in your community? What have you personally witnessed, and what have you heard from residents living there?
Right. Interesting that you bring it up, and it's ironic, but I was just in the field on a hillside at the Coit Park in Kalihi Valley. We actually hiked it up there to see the homeless count, again, on a hillside at the Coit Park. It's a city park. So, yes, there has been a spike in homelessness in our district, but we're doing our best to try to address this and try to find shelter or a nice transition for them. Again, it's not against the law to be homeless, but unfortunately, it does sometimes affect the surrounding residents. There's been an uptick in crime in Kalihi Valley, so that's another concern. But yes, homelessness is very prevalent, and my district is no different than many other districts. We have a high rate of homelessness in our area.
And more specifically, talking about homelessness in the area, you talked about, seeing them up on the hillside in a camp. Where else are homeless being seen in the community?
Throughout. So not only Kalihi, you've got the west side, you've even got pockets in the east area, especially they congregate by water, beaches, when you have a stream, running water, under bridges, places where they can be tucked away and away from the general public. You'll see a number of homeless camps in those areas.
Yes, and Senator, what does the homelessness crisis look like on Hawaii Island? I know you represent the district of Puna. What are you seeing out there?
So basically, we don't have as much of a problem as the Honolulu urban core. And that's because, James Koshiba, the homelessness director, basically succinctly put it this way. I mean, the reason we have seen the rise in homeless is because of the lack of deeply affordable housing. So on the east side of the Big Island, you see them like in downtown, and most of the time, like in Puna, really, because we have a lot of acreage. They can be in the bushes, but the ones who are more visible are the ones who are in downtown. And they're the ones who go on the street, they're the ones who beg, they're the ones who basically are on the sidewalks. However, like I was pointing out to somebody, in Hilo, the average rent for a 3-bedroom is $2,000. Whereas in the urban core in Honolulu, the average rent for a studio or 526 square foot is $2,600. So a family who could afford $2,000 per month in rent, can house in Hilo on the east side, a 3-bedroom where they can house siblings, parents, kids. Whereas in the urban core, if you can only afford the studio, you cannot house extended family. So that's why we're starting to see more and more where there is a lack of deep affordable housing is where you're going to see far more homeless. And that's why you see them over like in Kalihi and the urban core, far more than you will see them like in my district, where there is more where there is more affordable housing in the sense that we can, for the same amount of money, we can afford more rooms to house more extended family.
Yes, and thank you so much for bringing that up. The cost of living in Hawaii alone, you mentioned housing, but also just, basic necessities, food, gas to get to work, and all of these things, they definitely add up and, can eventually lead to homelessness. I was hoping if either one of you could talk about what has led to this homeless crisis right now that we're seeing.
So last week, like I said, James Koshiba did it succinctly. Frankly, they did an analysis. We did not, when I was growing up in Honolulu, Ala Park used to have the homeless tents, that's where Mayor Fossey put it. But you don't see the kind of prevalence that you see now, that you did then. Okay, you don't see them like Representative Mizuno said, like along the rivers, along the canals, over in the urban core, or on the Big Island, where you would see them out in the tourist areas on the sidewalks. You didn't see that. But so Koshiba pointed out, that we don't have a higher amount of addiction that you would think would lead to homeless. We don't have a higher amount of behavioral health issues, which you would think would lead to homeless. What we do have is this huge wage gap that is occurring now versus what has occurred back in the 70s or so when I was growing up in urban Honolulu. You don't see, so until we figure out how to provide deeply affordable housing, and affordable housing depends upon your wages, right? If you are working at a minimum wage job in urban core Honolulu, you really can't even afford a studio. That's why when I went to check out the HONUs as human services chair, we had we checked out the HONUs last year prior to the start of session, and we saw people by the HONU by the airport, suiting up to go to work. They can't afford regular rent in the urban core. So I am basically I tasked all of the homeless providers to come up with a goal. And because we can't just keep throwing money and not knowing where the money is going, I wanted them to set up goals as to what AMI we need to check out. And basically, Koshiba rose up to the task, gave us the figures that we need to, and really, the kind of kauhales like they have over in Kalailoa, the Kauhiki village, where we're looking at regular working people who just need affordable rents, is what we really, really, really need now, especially in the urban core. And of course, we always need the behavioral health stabilization beds to ensure that, and which recently we have provided monies for supportive housing for those behavioral health issues, those who are getting off of drugs and that. But if we really want to tackle the problem, we need deeply affordable housing. And thank you, Representative Mizuno. Off to you.
We're not only colleagues, we're very good friends. We really partner on many of the policies and work really well together, especially during conference. So I wanted to thank Senator San Buenaventura for being a great colleague and an awesome friend. I'll share my thoughts on the background of homelessness. Why do people become homeless? A number of reasons. So in addition to the funding gap or the being of the lower income bracket, some people have a mental condition, some have a addiction, and many others have both. They're duly diagnosed. They have both a mental condition and an addiction. We've got veterans that place their life in harm's way to protect our freedoms, and they come back with post-traumatic stress disorder. We have others that, exactly what Senator San Buenaventura said, they're working, they're employed, they're the working homeless, but they just can't maintain a home or cover the rent due to the high cost of living in our state, and they become homeless. Some of our homeless are domestic violence victims, and others were forced into sex trafficking. And finally, some people just choose to be homeless. It's their choice, and this is not against the law. So there are many reasons, and I agree with Senator San Buenaventura. There was a big gap. We need to provide more affordable housing. James Koshiba, the state homeless coordinator, has been doing a great job, hit the ground running. We've got a number of projects that we're working on to try to best address homelessness, which we work with Senator San Buenaventura. One of the best, it's original for any state and nation. And Senator, you'll recall this, Ohana zones. Ohana zones. This is what Joy and we've been supporting and partnering for a number of years. This was talked about years ago, and thank God with Senator San Buenaventura's support, it became reality. It's to allow a homeless person or family to be in a safe area, Ohana zone or a safe zone, and we are putting money behind it. 15 million for fiscal year 2024. It provides housing, meals, hygiene center, so you can take showers, and wraparound support services. So again, I wanted to thank Senator San Buenaventura. She worked really hard on the Ohana zones. This is one way in addressing our homeless issue. Hopefully, they get back on their feet, they become more self-sufficient, and then they can get a affordable rental unit. So that's our goal. But that's just one. We've got the Housing First program, Kauhale projects, exactly what Senator San Buenaventura mentioned, where you have, it's kind of like a small village setting where you have people that aren't ready to rent yet, but you also have wraparound services for them. And again, I agree with Senator, we need more affordable rental units. If we can do that, we can better address the homelessness in our state.
Yes, and you both brought up the importance and the need for bringing that affordable rent prices for this housing. What would you say is a feasible price for rent to, allow these people to have a place to call home?
I really want to look at the Kahiki Village model, where basically it is a rent based upon income. And if you ever, for the people who don't know, Kahiki Village is that a village right off Sand Island, Access Road. It was created really by private development. Private developers put this together with partnership. It is an excellent showcase, really, of public-private partnership. That's where DLNR had allowed for their lands to be used by private developers to put up these temporary shelters. And all of the people in the Kahiki Village either have jobs or have a way to get jobs, and they have wraparound services there. And these are people who would otherwise be homeless. And what we are really, although it's very easy to see the people on the streets, they're the ones causing the most trouble, are the ones with mental issues, with addiction problems. Really, a vast majority of the housing, those who are houseless, are those who have some form of income but just can't afford the rents in Honolulu. So Kahiki Village is sliding scale. The Kauhale over in Kalailoa, which is run by AMVETS, all those people who are in there have some form of income too, and they just can't afford rents. I can't really say how much is what's required, but all I can say is for a family at $2,600 per month for a studio is certainly not that affordable. Okay, that somebody who is working full time, working at McDonald's, cannot afford that kind of rent.
Yes, I agree with Senator San Buenaventura. The Kauhale projects have been great. They're kind of like tiny homes in a village. And for the fiscal year 2024, we have appropriated 15 million, looking at my notes, and 33 million for fiscal year 2025. That's 63 million for homeless projects. These Kauhale projects are tiny homes. I think that's a great start. I agree with Senator San Buenaventura. You need to probably have a sliding scale. So if I'm the homeless guy, and I just don't have a job, I can't afford paying for rent, if I could stay in these micro units, these tiny homes, it would be workable. Eventually, a month, 2, 3 months down the line, I get a job, maybe as a landscape person or working on a farm or whatever. Then the sliding scale changes. I can afford $400 or $500 a month. That would work. I agree with Senator. You need a sliding scale so you can help all of our people slowly get back on their feet, but safely get back on their feet. Interestingly enough, when I was on a big island, Senator's area, we saw micro units for kupuna. We visited a couple of homeless centers, and they actually had these really nice micro units that were relatively cheap to build, and they were doing the exact thing that Senator San Buenaventura said. They were using a sliding scale for payment. Some of the kupuna could not afford. They were living there rent free. Others that were getting Social Security, retirement benefits, they were paying based on what money they were receiving on a sliding scale. So again, I agree with Senator. I think we have to think outside of the box. I believe these Kauhale villages and micro units will be more prevalent as the years continue.
Yeah, thank you both for describing these different projects that are in the works and that we've seen. You know, you mentioned Kauhale. There's a temporary unit set up right next to the governor's mansion, and that's been helping a lot of people in the area. I was hoping, we could talk a little bit more about Kauhale. How do people get admitted or are able to use these little units, and what kind of things do they offer there?
So the Kauhale off of the right across the parking lot from the governor's mansion. And I have to hand it to Governor Green, the Department of Health and Department of Human Services personnel for allowing this tiny village to occur on their parking lot and taking up their parking spaces. That is temporary, and that is specifically for medical respite. For the honus, those pop-up tents that come up, anybody can really go into that one. Okay. And basically the referrals, the normal referrals, if you don't just walk in, are basically from the police and the Corps, those the mobile units, the volunteers who help the homeless off the streets, because those the honus are part of the Ohana Zones project. They have wraparound services. And those are the easy referrals. And we also have the triage that's over by Dillingham that has just recently opened up. It's run by IHS. And that one, the referrals are usually by the police and the and basically Corps, those mobile social workers by the city and county of Honolulu. So off to you, Chair Mizuno. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. For the Kauhales over in Kalailoa, that's run by American vets. So those, you need to be a veteran. Okay, but like I said, James Koshiba, along with, of course, with Governor Green's leadership and the legislature's providing support, is basically the idea is to have more Kauhales to help, people like Twinkle Borges over in Waianae have the kind of community to continue, to have that kind of community type of work and environment that provides support. If you ever, by the way, go to any of these Kauhales, like the one across from State Capitol, you will see a community at work, okay? They help each other. They find like wheelchairs for each other because that's on medical respite. They help each other go to, like one is going to cancer treatment. They help each other go to, and that's the kind of, that's the very definition of Kauhale. So I'm sure Representative Mizuno has more examples of that.
Thanks, Senator. Yeah, we actually were there for the grand opening. Senator was there with Representative Belatti, Amato, myself, and of course Governor Green was there. We enjoyed touring the Kauhale project right next to the Capitol and Governor's Mansion, and there it is medical respite. They also have a hygiene area there, a mobile unit. So it was great because if I was to live there, I could easily take a shower, get ready to go to work if I needed to. And they had Joy, if I'm correct, Center, 24/7, I believe, social worker living on site. So they could, if an incident or anything happened, they would be there to address it. But I think these Kauhale villages they're very successful so far, and I think we're going to see a lot more of them. Um, I did want to mention something, Senator. I didn't mention this before, but there's the Housing First program. This is for the really difficult homeless clients. Usually, these are people that are chronically homeless and they suffer from a drug addiction, sometimes both from a drug addiction and a mental condition. But again, this is really the most difficult of our homeless to try to house because they're not used to being in a house or a rental unit. But we do our best. So Housing First is another program that we have endorsed and we do have for use in the state. But again, this is only for a small percentage of homeless.
Homelessness is a tough issue. There's the two types of homelessness that you've talked about, those who are working and trying to make ends meet but can't afford housing, but also those who, maybe with like drug addiction and other things of reasons why they're homeless. How do you differentiate the two, and how do you make policies to help those two types of individuals in these circumstances? What kind of health or mental health programs are being offered for these people? And is there any programs that are working to help people find jobs as well?
So Emily, it really depends. So if I'll just use myself as an example, I'm the homeless guy. I have a mental condition and I have an addiction, a drug addiction. I'm going to probably need a team uh, to help me get back on my feet, steer me in the right direction. The reason why Senator and I would endorse that would be I'm a frequent flyer. I go to Queens Hospital once every other week. Me alone, I could cost over $1 million in medical costs, both Medicaid and just general losses to the hospital. So what you do with an individual like me, you have a team. You've got a social worker to watch over me and meet with me weekly. You've got a doctor. The physician's going to be looking at my medication to make sure they're going to rotate around and find what is the best mix of medication for me to keep me sound mind. You're also going to have a nurse practitioner. If I have an addiction, they're probably going to have to give me medication or possibly an injection. I might need to get that injection once a week, once a month. So be it. So you have a team now working with me to get me back on my feet. The reason for this, although it sounds like it's going to be costly, it pales in comparison to my $1 million medical costs for the year with this team. And it's specialized just for a handful of homeless. Now, the second homeless that you're talking about, the working homeless, they don't have a drug addiction, they don't have a mental condition, they're just falling out of the ability to pay for their rent. That's going to be totally different. They're not going to probably need all the services that I would need. So you're talking about two different groups. Of course, the group that's already working, a lot easier to help out. They're already motivated. They already got a job. Slowly, when they build their nest egg back up, then they can go on their own and get affordable rental units. But again, that's what Senator San Buenaventura mentioned earlier. We need to get more affordable rental units, and then they can start to be housed there. So from my point of view, those are the two different groups of homelessness.
And Senator, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, so Emily, your question is how do you differentiate? Basically, that's what intake workers do. So whenever you go to a HONU, for instance, or a core volunteer sees you on the street, or you enter into any kind of homeless program, then basically the social worker determines what it is you need. And if they, with the intake, determine that you have like an addiction or a, behavioral health issue, then basically the behavioral health crisis shelters are there. That's what, some people, if it's like in the middle of the night, that's what 988 does. Both Representative Mizuno and myself toured the CARES, the 988 facility over on Oahu, and they showed us their database of where they find the need and where they're able to then refer these people off to. But basically, social workers are in huge demand, and we don't have enough social workers. And so we wanted to have this last session more monies for the behavioral crisis shelters, and that fell through, and hopefully there's going to be a huge demand, of course, for those behavioral crisis shelters. And we didn't bring up, except for Representative Mizuno, about housing first, but we also have a rapid rehousing project. But those are federal programs that have been in the works for a while, and those have not, along of course with Section 8 vouchers, which are the waiting list. If you talk to regular people, they say, well, why is it that the working poor can't just have Section 8 housing? Well, there isn't enough Section 8 housing. And there are landlords who refuse to accept Section 8 vouchers. And that's why we still continue to have the homeless working poor. The waiting list for Section 8 is so long that one time, and I think as of now, they've actually stopped accepting people on the wait list because they just can't seem to fill. We don't have enough monies for it right now.
Yes, with all that being said, what are next steps now for both of you in this next legislative session to, keep working to help this homeless crisis in Hawaii? What do you guys plan, in this next couple of months?
For me, Senator San Buenaventura and I, we worked well together with Senator Moriwaki on the Return to Home program. This would be to fly a homeless person in Hawaii to the mainland to be with their family. We're not indiscriminately sweeping homeless out of our state. We are connecting them, repatriating them with their family. So I wanted to read a quote by former Mayor Mufi Hanneman, who's now the president of the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association. He provides, it was reported that nearly 800 people participated with just 2% returning to Hawaii. We believe a major reason for the high level of success of our program was that it required the individual to be met at their destination by a family member or a loved one. He's talking about the Return to Home program, which we just passed this year. In addition, Connie Mitchell, director for IHS, had stated that her program, she partnered with Mufi Hanneman, by all accounts, has been a success at its pre-COVID peak. We successfully relocated over 100 people each year in the past 8 years. Overall, we relocated over 600 people from Oahu, primarily to the U.S. mainland and neighbor islands. Mitchell goes on to say that the cost to the community to support a homeless person would be on the low side, around $35,000. So this is a program that no other state has. We believe, again, we're not sweeping our homeless. We're reducing homeless by reconnecting them, repatriating them with their family, with the support group. If we don't have a support group, we're not going to send them to be homeless in California or Texas. Alaska is trying to do that now. The Anchorage mayor is trying to do that. But I just sent a letter to him imploring him to follow our Return to Home program as a blueprint. Do not just send your homeless indiscriminately to Texas, California, Hawaii, or anywhere else, because it's a recipe for disaster. They need a support unit to help them get off the ground.
The reality is, if you look at the point in time counts and the demography of the demographics of those who are homeless, a very small percentage are those who are actually who have lived in Hawaii for less than 1 year. A huge percentage are of the Native Hawaiian population. And so last year, we put in an extraordinary amount of money to the Hawaiian homelands of $600 million, and really almost $1 billion in project, which if you include the stadium, Bolodrome, and the like. And I'm just hoping that those monies that they're going to put it into good use. And in fact, when we questioned the appointees for their confirmation as to their plans to house the Native Hawaiians and put them back on the Hawaiian homelands and put them, give them homes. so that at least that promise that has been made a long time ago will start being fulfilled, that hopefully at least that huge percentage of population will be housed. We put in $200 million just this last session for supportive housing to entice the developers into creating more supportive housing. So these are the people who are chronically homeless because of behavioral health challenges, major disabilities. And like Representative Mizuno talked about frequent flyers, the frequent flyers aren't only those who have addictions. If you actually go to look at the HONUs and talk to the social workers there, some of the time it's people who need like frequent treatment. That's why the medical respite is so necessary, that has popped up next to the governor's mansion. We're going to need more behavioral health crisis shelters. And we tried this session, and hopefully we'll have more of that, which are for to ensure that those who are disabled, those who are going through addiction because they need a little bit more help, those who are those who are behaviorally health challenged will have a place to stay. So and the reality is, every time we do have a point in count, it is getting smaller. People just don't see it, okay? And it's because of programs like what Representative Mizuno is talking about, the return to home, and also more and more people we're finding more and more homes. But hopefully in the next few years, because the kauhales are geared to go up through Governor Green's leadership, the $600 million hopefully will start filtering out and provide homes for the Native Hawaiians, who can, of course, with homes, have more extended family and be able to have the kind of community that they want to have. And we're going to hopefully be able to see in the next, and of course, the Aloha Homes program with a 99-year lease that we've just approved will provide deeply affordable housing. So hopefully in the next 5 years, you will see a significant drop in homelessness, and not just us telling you that we are reducing it little by little.
Yes, thank you so much, Senator. And, I wanted to go to a quick thing that Representative brought up of, we heard that the mayor of Anchorage is planning on sending homeless people to warmer cities. And while he didn't mention Hawaii specifically, it's something that a lot of our viewers at Hawaii News Now have heard about of, homeless people getting shipped to Hawaii. What is your response to that?
Yes, I did do the letter, sent it off to him. I also emailed him, and I just said, Mayor, this is not going to work. You cannot just indiscriminately send homeless to the other 49 states. You're sweeping them, and you're making your homeless, our problem. Hawaii's got a finite amount of resources for our local homeless. It's not fair for Alaska to send our homeless to us, to Texas, California, Florida, wherever. Now, I did say this. If you are to follow Hawaii's blueprint and make sure the homeless person that you're sending out from Anchorage, from Alaska, has a family, a support group willing to accept them, it's going to be fine. Because now you're sending the homeless out of Alaska, but they're going to be received by a support group, meaning you're going to reduce homelessness. So at the end of the day, that would work. But indiscriminately just sweeping your homeless, not going to work. And a perfect example is New York had, it's called the SOTA program, SOTA. They were sending homeless indiscriminately throughout the nation. And we wrote a letter to the U.S. Attorney General saying this is illegal. And they shut down that program. So New York's failure is an example of what works, what doesn't work. And clearly, New York's program didn't work. I warned the Anchorage mayor not to do that because it's going to be similar to what New York did. And his program, if he were to do that, would only fail. So thank you for bringing it up. It is a concern to not only Hawaii, but the other states. And you really need to have a well thought out plan before you do this type of homeless sweep. But yeah, thanks for bringing up that point.
Yes, absolutely. And, I wanted to bring up one more thing. So, the ACLU recently filed a lawsuit against the city about its policies of homelessness, including sweeps, arrests, and citations. The ACLU claims that this is a violation of homeless people's rights. Although this was filed against the city, obviously homelessness is seen throughout the islands. I was hoping both of you could respond to the idea of, quote, criminalizing homeless people and, how to prevent these things from happening again.
We have a diversion program. The courts have started putting the diversion program together where basically if the offense is a violation where it is a like the sleeping ban, the vagrancy, the minor violation, then we will see whether or not we can move those people off to shelters rather than where they are. I don't want to comment on strictly criminalizing because, like I said, the judiciary has a diversion program. And so long as we have shelters for the homeless, those diversion programs will work and if they're voluntarily being put there versus in jail. So we're not criminalizing them as much as we used to.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing test. I mean, I'm not against ACLU whatsoever, but it's got to be a balancing test. If I've got homeless people that are may pose a safety concern or public safety issue to the residents in the community, then yes, you can't pitch a tent, on the street on Kalihi Street. You might get run in by a car or a truck. So yes, it's got to be a balance. Now for the homeless, I understand if they've got a structure and they've got some belongings, some valuables there, there should be a way to safely get that out and then help them. But at the end of the day, if they are not violating any law, yes, I can understand. I would be very supportive not to have the city or the state just take their personal belongings. But if they're trespassing, if they're in an area which poses a safety risk, the law is a law. It's there to protect them and protect the people around them. So again, I'm not saying anything negative against ACLU. I understand that homeless do have rights, and I support that, and I agree. But it's a balancing test. If they're violating the law, causing a safety issue or concern for themselves and others, they need to abide by that law. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Yes, and finally, talking about shelters in Hawaii, the ACLU notes that there are 2,300 homeless on Oahu, but fewer than 50 vacancies in shelters. Is there anything that the state is working on to, improve shelters, create more spaces? I know you mentioned the other programs, but anything specifically for shelters?
Joy, this is your thing, Ohana zones. This is the key to it because it's not exactly a single shelter, but you can have 50, you can have 100, you can have 200 people on a Ohana zone. The concept is great. And again, this is by the backing of Senator San Buenaventura. You can put a large number of homeless individuals as well as families on land that would be designated as homeless zone. They would have housing, meals, hygiene center where they can take showers, use the restroom, and wraparound services and security. So I'll kick it back to Senator San Buenaventura because, yeah, she's the originator. She really pushed Ohana zones, and today it's reality. So, Senator?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Representative Mizuno. That's exactly where we intend to. Instead of having people on the streets, that's what Ohana zones are for. It's a safe space. Because let's face it, the homeless people are the most victimized as far as criminality, because they are the most vulnerable on the streets. Ohana zones is a safe space for them. It allows for wraparound services. So if they need job assistance, if they need medication, if they need transportation, it is a place for them. And hopefully, so the ACLU's claim that 50 shelters, those are like 50 permanent shelters, but we do have a number of temporary shelters that we are pushing out every year. Okay. So, And again, I understand, I am a contributor to the ACLU every year. So I support ACLU's efforts. But public spaces are not only for the homeless, it's also for regular people. And so long as I'm just gonna, one of my temporary places whenever I'm in the capital is over in Kaimuki. Crane Park is an example. This is a place where the homeless had taken over, but when they were moved, all of a sudden, kids start playing back at Crane Park, and the community becomes alive again. Public spaces are not only for the homeless, but also for regular people. And so long as we have shelters available for them, I think they, and they're not being locked up, they can be moved around. So I don't see a problem with that, but I got to see the specifics of the lawsuit.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you both, touching on that. And, this is my last question for you both. I know you guys both mentioned, next steps of what you hope to achieve, but I kind of want to bring the timeline a little shorter. What do you really hope to accomplish and see at the end of this next legislative session?
We highlighted a lot of what we want to see done. Again, we want to focus on housing first programs to deal with the most difficult homelessness in a positive way, to help them slowly and safely get on their feet. We want to continue with Ohana zones. I'm so grateful to Senator San Buenaventura in pushing this major effort, which is now reality. We want to work on supporting more kauhale projects, building more tiny homes, micro units, helping kupuna and people with disabilities that are also homeless. Senator mentioned affordable housing. We need to build more affordable rental units so our people can live there without going to the mainland or becoming homeless. Again, we also have our statewide homeless coordinator, James Koshiba, who's been doing a great job navigating us out of so many homeless. And exactly what Senator San Buenaventura said, this is not one step is not a silver bullet to end homelessness. Return to home. I talked about the return to home program, another vital area in which we can reduce homelessness. But we have to collaborate, and all of these points that we brought up need to be worked efficiently to really reduce homelessness. Are we going to eliminate it? No. Again, is this a panacea silver bullet to end homelessness in Hawaii? No, it's not. We're being realistic. But if we do these things and support what Senator had mentioned about the frequent flyers, getting them the help they need, about kauhale, about affordable housing, and about DHHL with the $600 million we gave them to get a lot of the Hawaiians into housing, then we're going to significantly reduce homelessness. And that's my wish. If Senator and we see a significant reduction in homelessness, it's a win. Is it going to be eliminated? No, not by a long shot. We're being realistic. But if we can reduce it significantly and get better results, then at the end of the day, I think we did a good job.
And thank you, Representative Mizuno, because that's correct. Basically, House and Senate agree in those points that, especially now that James Koshiba has given us goals to work with, that basically we know where to put the monies. But a significant win would be if we have monies to pop up more behavioral health crisis shelters. That would be a win for me, would be. And to add also to what Representative Mizuno is, we really need more public-private partnerships. Like I talked about Kauhiki Village, that is a huge success. And also what Representative Mizuno pointed out, what's occurring with the micro shelters over on the Big Island and the Kupuna. That is a public-private partnership with the Catholic Church. And we're seeing more and more churches coming in, helping out. And because by having a public-private partnership, especially with churches and communities, you already have the yes in my backyard type of situation, community helping others in the community, and not just shrugging off people on the street as somebody who you don't need to care about.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with me on this issue, and I really appreciate it and look forward to the work that you're doing coming up. You can watch and listen to more of the Debrief at hawaiinewsnow.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you tune in next week. This is your host, Emily Cristobal, and mahalo for listening.